I am in the minority here on YouTube whenever I say that the car market crash is over, for now. I don't think we're going to see significantly lower car prices anytime soon. I think that new car prices will continue to stay high, if not go higher. And I also believe that despite the fact that dealerships are in fact having more trouble selling cars than they were a few years ago, this doesn't stop them from trying to price gouge. I mean, let's just look at the data. Dealership inventory is at pre-pandemic levels, incentives are getting closer and closer to the pre-pandemic levels, but the amount that we pay at the dealership for our car is still much, much higher than we saw 5 years ago. And so no, I don't think that we will see a return of car prices and the overall dynamic of the car market that we've seen in previous years, specifically pre-COVID. But there is one major market factor that could change everything, and in my humble opinion, I don't think that this is a matter of if this could impact the car market, I simply think it is a matter of when. And this involves consumer debt. In this video, I'm going to talk about why I think consumer debt will eventually crash the car market and potentially the economy as a whole, and what this means for you as car buyers. But before we dive into that, I do want to let you guys know that my course, the Car Sharing Masterclass, is on sale for just a couple of more days for our New Year sale, and you can use the code NEWYEAR215 to get $215 off, and this sale ends on January 25th. Now, the Car Sharing Masterclass is a robust course that teaches you everything that you need to know about starting and scaling a car sharing fleet with the same business model that I use. In the course, we go over things like how to buy cars and how to find below market value deals, how to handle damage claims in your day-to-day operations. We also have sections on co-hosting, and we're going to be adding a direct rental section later on this year. In addition to hours worth of course content, you also get access to private Discord group and our monthly Zoom calls as well. And we also offer a 30-day money-back guarantee so that you can give it a try at no risk to you. Again, you can use the code NEWYEAR215 to get $215 off, and the sale ends in a few days on January 25th. You can check it out by clicking on the link down in the description below. Now, well, of course, this is an automotive-focused channel, so I do want to talk about consumer debt in the context of cars, but you really can't talk about consumer debt with cars specifically without also talking about consumer debt in other segments like credit cards, mortgages, and more. Now, during the pandemic, consumer debt skyrocketed. A lot of things skyrocketed, in fact. You can see here how consumer spending was trending in 2019, followed by 2020 and 2021. There was an increase of about 12%. With consumers spending more in every category, but substantially more on things that would be considered non-essential, like dining out, clothes and apparel, alcohol, and entertainment. There are also a number of reports that have come out in the last couple of years that show that even credit scores went up artificially higher during the pandemic. And this, paired with lowering lending standards, low interest rates, and the ability to take out cheap debt between 2020 and really 2022, this has led to record high credit card debt, record high car debt, and high mortgage debt. In fact, debt across every single category has gone up. Now, there is sort of a silver lining here with the debt, and it is quite interesting. And that is despite the fact that the debt is at all-time high levels, debt-to-income ratio is still quite low, lower than pre-pandemic levels and much lower than in 2008 with the Great Recession. And so based on this graph, it looks as though while debt is absolutely rising, income is rising along with it. In fact, it's rising at a higher rate, meaning that theoretically, based on this report, Americans can afford the debt that they're taking out. But this really doesn't paint the whole picture, because while things may be fine debt-wise now, all you really need is one wrench thrown into the plans of Americans and all of this debt comes crashing down. For example, unemployment rate is still very, very low. Sure, it's not where we were at pre-pandemic, but it's still very good all things considered. But what happens if unemployment increases from the 4.1% that we see today to 5%, 6%, or 7%, or potentially even higher like what we saw in 2008? The tech industry has been doing layoffs for a while now, with 191,000 layoffs taking place in 2023 and 95,000 in 2024, with some sources showing that this data is almost double that. And as we speak, companies like Meta, BlackRock, and Microsoft have announced substantial layoffs. And as for where unemployment is trending in 2025, well, none of us really know exactly where it's going, but experts do believe that unemployment will increase this year. My point is, unemployment has been largely unchanged for the last 2 years, sort of teetering in the 4-ish% range, and to expect for this to continue indefinitely, I just don't know if that's realistic. And given our current debt debt situation and the fact that we are taking out record amounts of debt, even if technically from a debt to income ratio standpoint we can handle that debt, it feels as though consumers are really banking on the fact that the economy doesn't change and unemployment doesn't get lower. But whenever we take a deeper dive into the trends of consumer debt, I think that there's a much different picture that's painted. And what's painted is not the picture that Americans can easily afford the debt that they're taking out. Sure, debt to income ratio may give the illusion that debt may be out of hand, but income is keeping up just fine. But whenever you begin to look at delinquency rates and past due rates, it becomes very clear very quickly that consumers are in fact falling behind. Credit cards are getting closer and closer to Great Recession levels and have far surpassed pre-pandemic levels. The same can be said for auto loans. But truthfully, things have even gotten worse since this report was released late last year. Because according to new data from earlier this month, credit card defaults have reached 14-year highs. Even credit unions are reporting higher delinquencies. So it just feels as though something isn't adding up here. According to debt to income ratio, we're fine. But according to delinquency rates, there are millions of Americans that are far from it. And this entire scenario becomes even worse and a bit more strange whenever we mix in student loans. According to a report from the New York Times, student loan borrowers owe $1.6 trillion, and nearly half of all of these borrowers just aren't paying it. And due to a variety of different reasons, including inefficient systems for collecting funds, court rulings, and more, there really isn't a timeline of when and how all of these borrowers, half of all student loan borrowers, will begin to actually pay and get their money collected to pay off these loans. And as of recording this video, which for full transparency is being recorded a couple of days before Trump's inauguration, it is unclear how the Trump administration is going to handle student loans and the collection of student loan payments moving forward, because Republicans are generally speaking anti-loan forgiveness. Unless, of course, you're Rep. Vern Buchanan, Marjorie Taylor Greene, Mike Kelly, Mark Wayne Mullen, or Kevin Hern, who all took out loans in the 6 to 7 figure range through the COVID-era PPP program, which were all forgiven. But that's a pot that I probably shouldn't be stirring, at least not in this video. The point is, most likely I would imagine that something will be put into place under the Trump administration eventually that is designed to collect these student loan payments from these borrowers that just simply aren't paying, which will absolutely be a bad thing for this overall debt picture because it will allocate more money to student loans and less to these other debts, which will then cause delinquencies to go up. And I'm not here to talk about whether or not student loans should be forgiven. That isn't really a topic for this channel. The point is that student loan payments aren't really being paid, and once they are paid, it will mean less money is being allocated elsewhere, which will no doubt have an impact on delinquencies, how far people are behind on their bills, and when people default on these debts. Because again, the delinquencies I just spoke about, these delinquencies are taking place under an environment of record low student loan delinquencies, but once student loans are forced to be paid, because remember, student loans generally cannot be wiped out through bankruptcy, it'll mean that these borrowers are going to be forced to pay this bill. Now, one area that I do want to touch on, but I don't want to dive deep into, is the topic of insurance and how this aspect of our cost of living is increasing, thus having a trickle-down effect on everything else. Car insurance increased by 26% in 2024, but also home insurance, which just in the last week, the Institute for Energy Economics and Financial Analysis released a report breaking down the negative economic impact that rising insurance costs has on consumers and the economy. Sure, not necessarily something that is directly tied to consumer debt, but every single dollar that's going towards these other segments, like insurance, student loans, car payments, it means that debt is increasing elsewhere for these people who maybe have fixed income, or these people who are just living beyond their means. Now, there really isn't a clear conclusion to this video, but I think that what all of this data tells us, well, it's concerning. The fact of the matter is, Americans have record consumer debt, and while you can absolutely make the argument that Americans can afford this debt, there is absolutely another argument to be made that many simply cannot. I mean, how can we as a society in one breath over the last few years be complaining about the high cost of living while simultaneously continuing to buy these extremely expensive vehicles? And this is something that many of us, I know for myself, am reminded about nearly every day because as I drive around town, I'm continuously and regularly seeing these cars that are priced for between $80,000 and $120,000. And I'm consistently asking myself, how the heck are people affording that? And I guess the question of how how can people afford this can really be answered with, well, they can't, which is why debt is racking up. And in my belief, I think that this debt is simply unsustainable, which sort of brings us back to the start of this video. I don't think that the car market is going to crash anytime soon without some sort of factor coming in and causing it to increase or decrease. And I do think that consumer debt could cause that crash. If we have student loan payments ramp back up or unemployment tick up, people won't be able to keep up with the trillions of dollars of debt that they've accumulated. And I truly believe that this could crash the car market and potentially the economy. Like always, you guys, I hope that you enjoyed this video. If you have any questions, comments, if you have anything to add, I would love to hear it. So make sure to leave a comment down below. And while you guys are at it, make sure to hit the like button, hit that subscribe button, and hit the notification bell. And I will see you guys in the next video.